So we're building a drift car. So I'm going to do a series of videos on this 330 Ci. So this is a 2001 330 Ci that I bought. It's currently an automatic, but we're going to be fixing that. Has a bad transmission, so I was able to get a good deal on it. I've been gathering parts. Finally have enough parts to kind of do phase one here. So phase one of this is going to be doing a manual swap. I was able to get a ZF 5-speed out of another 330 Ci with the pedals, the electric fan, and everything that goes with it, the drive line, etc. Now, one of the things we're going to be changing along the way is the shifter assembly. We're going to be changing this to a Cooler Works shifter. Pretty excited about this guy. It's a chassis mount style shifter, so it gets rid of this whole floating assembly here, and this, and GarageIstic, I think is how you say it. I've got the selector rod that's double-sided, as the factory selector rod is one-sided, and this should give us a little bit more of a precise shifting setup. So beyond that, I have a coil rad aluminum radiator that my friend Christian at Eagle Motorworks, he's just got a channel, check it out, is going to be welding to be a triple pass. So the coolant will pass through it 3 times. Helps with keeping temps down when you're running these things hard. And then we're going to be doing an oil cooler, M series or S54. That's what's in here. Oil cooler. Oil filter housing, so that we can attach an oil cooler. We've got the fitting here for that. So basically we're going to be doing radiator, oil cooler, electric fan conversion, because this is an automatic. The automatics came with a manual fan, and then this manual swap. So pretty excited to get started. We're going to be doing probably video 1 is going to be doing the manual swap, and then video 2 we'll probably do the radiator and oil cooler, and we also have a oil temperature gauge here. Part of doing this manual swap with the Cooler Works shifter, we reached out to Condor, and we've got motor and trans mounts. They're a really hard poly, so they're technically a solid mount, but they do give just a smidge of vibration resistance from my understanding. Went ahead and grabbed an M-Rain boot to go along with the shifter, since we have a light colored boot that came with this salvage trans, and the interior of this car is black. So phase 2 will be, and I've started to get some parts for that, but I've got OMP racing seat on the way, harness. This is an Energy harness bar. We're going to be using, as part of this manual swap, we've got a Clutchmaster 6-puck clutch to go with it, because this will be a drift car. So we're going to be doing a lot. And then phase 2 is going to be, like I said, it's going to be the racing seat, the harness, the suspension. We're going to be welding the rear diff. We're going to be doing bushings, doing supports. Excuse the spider web, this thing did come out of a field. So and then we're going to be welding up the subframe, excuse me. So there is some subframe cracking that happens on these when they're pushed hard, so there's some plates we're going to be adding to weld up, but that will be a phase 2. So step 1, we're just trying to get this thing to be a manual and do as many things as we can while we're in there to make this thing running drivable, and then we'll come back around and do all the suspension, the angle kit, etc. So we're excited to get going. This is going to be a personal hobby car of mine, so we'll kind of be working on it as we can. Alright, somebody's already done the honors of chopping this exhaust before the rear axle on this car. We'll have to probably get something, a new cat back or something, but first step is dropping the exhaust. So you're gonna have some exhaust hangers here, there. There might be one hiding right in this area. I'm not sure because mine's not there, but for me, if yours are like that, just take those off. And then these cross brackets are gonna have to come off, but we're gonna wanna kind of do that last because the exhaust is attached. So for what we're doing here, we're gonna take these 4 nuts off here. Oop, we'll let that focus in. We're gonna take those 4 nuts off. We're gonna drop the exhaust by dropping these 2 metal pieces here that hold the exhaust up. After that, the metal shield behind it is going to come down, and it's held on along the edges with these small 10 millimeters. So that's all going to come out, and then driveline next. So I'm going to go ahead, I don't have a tripod with me, so I'm going to go ahead and just take the exhaust off. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then I'm going to take this metal heat shield off, and then we'll come back for the driveline removal, and we'll go from there. Okay, so exhaust, heat shield, and then you have your driveline exposed here. So looks like I lucked out. It looks like this driveline may have been replaced, so that's handy. We're going to be ended up using, I believe, most of the manual one anyways. So basically from here, this heat shield that went right above here has got to come out. It comes out real self-explanatory. After you get the cross members out, there was only a couple 10 mils. I think there was 4 holding it in the corners. And then there's another one that's right here. Excuse me. There's another one that's right here that was kind of covering this cross member. I knew we were going to need that out of the way for later, so I went ahead and just took that out. There was 3. You kind of have to pull this one out, use a flathead or something, get it out of the way, and then you can snake it out of there. So from here, to drop the drive line, what we're going to do is there's 3 bolts on this end. You got your carrier bearing, 2 bolts to hold that in, and then we've got 2, 4, looks like 6. These are in E-Torx, so just to give you an idea what that looks like. So see if it'll, so it's an E12, so that's what it looks like on the inside. So it's a 6-sided star, that's what that is. And you'll need a set of these for working on most European cars, Mercedes, BMW, etc. So but yeah, so what we're gonna do is basically just take these out, take the drive line, drop it. If you have your emergency brake on, you're going to need to release that or hold it while you crack all these loose, and then roll. You can just roll the back wheels to get to the others. And then once that's out of the way, we're going to start disconnecting things on the transmission, start working on the bell housing, and then this skid plate here has to come out, and that's held up. There's access holes for the bolts there, so on all the bolts that hold it up. So skid plate's got to come off. Hopefully once we get this all out of the way, we can address whatever leaks happening here. This has just been sitting on a rack for like a week, so I think we might have a oil pan leaking, but we'll get better eyes on that in a minute. But yeah, so driveline out, skid plate off, and then we'll go from there. All right, so sometimes these get really stuck in here. On the 4 bolts, they're a little easier because you can come from the back with a pry bar and catch them. On the 6 bolts, there's really not a lot you can grab. So I tried getting it out a few different ways, and I was having no luck with pry bars and hammers. And so what you want to do is get yourself a nice long screwdriver that's square, and there's a small spot right here. I already broke this loose, but basically what I ended up doing was getting it wedged in there, and I used a crescent wrench and I twisted it, and that separated it for me. So I was having a really hard time trying to use a prying motion or hammering, and I really didn't want to wail on it and hurt the differential. So screwdriver, twist, and it popped right out. Alright, so we got our skid plate off, and our drive line is off. So the next thing that we're going to do is start taking this transmission out. So first thing you want to do is drain the fluid. That's going to be that plug right there. Get the fluid out of the transmission. That's going to help with weight and just making it so you don't spill fluid everywhere. And then you're going to want to support the transmission somehow, whether you have a screw jack. In our case, we have a nice transmission jack. So we're going to put a transmission jack underneath the transmission here. And then we're going to disconnect the cross member from the body there. And that's going to allow us to start to tilt the transmission. And basically the transmission and the engine are going to tilt together and give us access to all the bell housing bolts. So you can see some of them from here, but essentially you've got your starter up there basically at 11 o'clock, and then you've got a couple 10mm E's, and you've got some 12mm E's and some 14mm E's, all that hold this transmission on. You're not going to want to separate it immediately. We're just going to tilt it so it'll give us access. And then over here, you can see there's a plug right there. We're going to get that plug off, and that's going to allow us to do the 3 torque converter bolts. You're going to get a 22mm, and you can turn the crank over to get those torque converter bolts out. You can choose your order. You can do that first before you get everything at an angle. To make things easier on yourself, or you can get it at an angle and then do it. It doesn't really matter. But step 1, drain the fluid, and then we're going to start separating things. Over here you've got your linkage. This is basically just crack this loose, and then you can get it away from this bracket close enough so that it slides out. And I can show you that, and then here as well. And then you've got transmission cooler lines right there. There's a 13mm bolt that holds that to the side of the transmission. Get ready to catch fluid when that comes out. If you're doing a manual swap like I am, you're going to end up not reusing any of those lines. We're going to end up running them all the way forward and disconnecting them here. But if you're just putting a transmission back in, then obviously just lay them out of the way and reuse them. So our connector here just unscrews. So you can just unscrew that and it'll lay out of the way. But yeah, we got quite a bit going on here. So there's a couple connectors to do that with. There's another one right there as well. So we're going to start there. So I'm going to get the fluid drained, and then we'll get the transmission jack underneath, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay, so we have our transmission supported. We went ahead and took off the transcooler lines. I went ahead and drained as much as I could, and then I put a glove around them so they didn't make a mess. I disconnected this electrical plug, and I disconnected that electrical plug. I don't know if you can see, there you go. There's some clips that wire rides across the top that I'm going to just reach up there and try to pull the wire so that it's not attached. But this gave us just a little bit more swing so we can try to get the rest of those bolts. As far as this goes, you just need two 17 millimeters. You crack the front one loose, spin it off, and then you can spin this forward, and that exposes the wire. And once the wire is exposed, you can pull back. Oh, went too far. And this is your shift selector, so you just spin it back far enough that you can get it out of the bracket, and then you just crack this one loose, and this can just swing out of the way. We're gonna end up pulling that out completely once we get inside there and mess with the shifter and stuff. So that's where we're at. I'm gonna get all this apart, and then I'm probably, before I do any bell housing bolts, I'm probably gonna go ahead and take care of the torque converter bolts, just so that I don't risk separating that and pulling the torque converter out of the front of the trans and just making a huge mess. So that's where we're at. Alright, so you can see that torque converter bolt peeking through right there. So you're just gonna wanna roll the motor over. There's 3 of them. You're also going to want to take that 10 millimeter that's holding the bracket for these O2 sensor wires so they don't get snagged. They're just finger tight once you break them loose, so just crack them loose. We'll just keep your wrench on the crank and use that for leverage and pull against each other, and they'll crack loose. Careful not to drop your socket down in here. It doesn't really matter since it's coming apart anyways, but I dropped one of the bolts already down in there, so be real careful as you're getting them out. Luckily this is coming apart anyways, so we'll get them, but just be mindful of that, and get that apart, and then we'll start on the bell housing bolts. Alright, you can see that bolt that I dropped. You're going to want to come right in here and just kind of separate the torque converter from the flex plate there. It just has a little bit of give. It should be pretty easy. You just want to make sure it's not seized on the snout there. So just give it a little separation, and now we're good to start doing bell housing bolts. Alright, let's see if we can get this thing to focus. So this is up and over the top here. Oh, there we go. You can kind of see those bell housing bolts from here. So there you go. Sorry, this thing will not focus. But you'll be able to see them. So you've got 2 14s on the right, and then your starter is over here on the left. Those are 2 12s. Alright, quick update. So those two, 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock, are out, but the bolts are still in there, but they're completely loose. That guy right over there at like 2 o'clock was a pain in the butt. I actually had to have somebody come right between here with a big pry bar and pry the whole transmission and everything to the left a good probably 2 inches. And then even so, I had to use a wobbly ended extension to get the angle so that I could get on that bolt. Be real careful not to strip these out. Make sure you're on it all the way before you put leverage on them. And then beyond that, the starter, kind of hard to see, but there is a dowel that stays in the transmission but sticks into the starter. If you got a long pry bar or a long extension, you can lightly tap on the starter up there to the left. You can kind of see those marks. Obviously be careful not to damage anything, but you can lightly tap on that. Or you might be able to, I was kind of able to do both, come up through here. I don't know if you can see it. You might not be able to get eyes, but you can come up through here and you'll see there's a seam. Here we go, maybe that'll give you an angle. there's a seam up there where that starter sits, and you can kind of see that dowel right there. And you can get a pry bar between there, but you kind of have to give that a little bit of love and get that starter separated from the transmission before you go too deep, because it will bind up and fight you. So okay, so the hard bolts are out. Now we're just gonna do these small guys around the edge. So you got some E10, and I got a couple more. There's a couple E10s along here, and I got one more 14 right there. So I got my transmission jack loaded and ready to go. Got weight on it. So this is it. Final moments here. I'm gonna try to separate the rest of this and see if we can get a pry bar in between the bell housing and kind of walk it back, and I think we'll be home free there. So alright, so those last few bolts came out, and then I just very carefully stuck a pry bar and just very easily walked it back while holding the top, and all the weight is now bearing down on my, you can see the starter up there, weighing down on here on my transmission jack. So I'm going to very carefully inch it back just a little bit more to clear the flex plate, and then we'll come down. Alright, just coming down, making sure we're not hanging up on anything. We're gonna let this thing just drop. Alright, so from here, if you are just replacing your automatic transmission, obviously it's just going to be reverse of installation. You're going to put it back in, get all the bolts back in. Fishing the starter back in is going to be a pain. You might have to finagle that from the top a little bit. In this case, we're doing a manual swap, so the next step is going to be to get that flex plate off so that we can mount the flywheel and everything. It looks like we got some moisture, so we're probably going to do a rear main seal and stuff like that while we're in there. We're going to get some eyes on it and see if we've got something else leaking. But probably going to be doing a rear main seal and get the clutch in, and then transmission in. In the meantime, we're going to start tackling shifter assembly stuff. So right now, this whole plug, we got to go up inside, take that apart, get this disconnected so we can pull this out, and then the way that our shifter attaches, I think, yeah, we might be able to just do it all from inside. So we'll have to see if we'll need to trim this back or not. I'm not sure yet. Haven't ever installed a cooler work shifter before, but we're going to be installing it, so I'll probably look at the instructions first. But first step's going to be to gut all of the automatic shifter assembly, wiring and all that. So that'll be next up after we get the clutch and flywheel. I'm not sure which we're going to do first. I'm going to go wash up and make a decision.